Welcome back to Salt City FC, the podcast about soccer in Utah on the Wasatch Front, from Real Salt Lake to Utah Royals FC to college soccer and beyond. Here for a special dispatch on a special occasion, quite frankly, because I heard about this recently, and now the news is officially public that I think is pretty cool. And that's RSL fans, if you're not at the stadium this Saturday, 7:30 p.m., America First Field in Sandy, Utah, against MLS expansion side San Diego FC, you'll get a chance to hear two voices that I know you've been waiting a long time to hear back together again on an RSL broadcast. For one night only. That's a little bit tongue-in-cheek. But it might be, because it may be temporary. It's officially right now a short-term call-up. But David James, DJ himself, the longtime voice of RSL on the television waves, who's made the transition to the radio booth, will join MLS Season Pass broadcaster Brian Dunseth, Dunny, hashtag Australian for toilet, back on the MLS Season Pass on Apple TV broadcast for Real Salt Lake and San Diego FC this Saturday, March 8th. It's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool moment, bringing back two voices that I know soccer fans kind of grew up loving for the past couple of years on their television screens. And I know there were kind of some feelings here and there when the two went their separate ways. Dunny obviously went off and joined the Apple crew at MLS, and DJ kind of stuck around locally and transitioned into the radio booth, and both of them have done fantastic jobs there. And shout out to Max Bredos, who's been paired with Dunny for most of the last couple of years at Apple. I think those two have developed a remarkable chemistry. They're amazing together. But there's something that hits a little bit different here on the Wasatch Front for DJ and Dunny, and they're going to be back together again. So when I first heard about this, I called up both of them, sat down with them, and I just wanted to know kind of what some of their feelings were getting the band back together, so to speak. How they found out about the news, how they arranged it. Again, as of right now, it's a one-off. Maybe that changes a little bit later. Maybe this becomes something of a tryout for the two to transition full-time back into the Apple booth. I don't know. We'll see. Who knows? You can't really predict these things too well. I wouldn't count on it necessarily at the moment, but again, anything's possible. I never say never to anything. At the very least, I think it's pretty cool that this is happening this weekend against RSL in San Diego. Two Southern California natives. DJ's actually from the San Diego area, funny enough. Both of them have now made their home for years on the Wasatch Front. TJ was telling me he's actually lived in Salt Lake longer than he lived in San Diego. So if you're worried about bias, RSL fans, you're probably more apt to be concerned about bias the other direction. It's been a long time since he left America's finest city, as they like to call themselves. Either way, he knows the area. He knows the history of soccer in the area. I think he'll be awesome on the call, awesome on the broadcast, and awesome once again paired up with his longtime color commentary specialist in Dunny. So without further ado, here's a conversation that I had with both DJ, and then I'm going to tag on a short combo that I had with Dunny at the end about the two of them getting back together, and maybe first, how they made this reunion of sorts even possible.
I got a phone call that they needed somebody for the match, and it's a one-off. Max is filling in for someone else who I think has a family commitment, and so they needed somebody, and Dunny suggested me, and I'm here, and I don't have to fly anybody in. I'm following the team, so I'm already prepping for the game. I just heard about it in the run-up this week to the game. So I usually go out to training on Tuesdays. And that was the day I found out about it.
Does being back with Dunny kind of help sort of that retransition back, I guess, because you've been on the radio, obviously, for the most part, for the last couple of years, and TV and radio, obviously, you dual sport every day like that.
Yeah.
Was that a big deal of kind of moving back over to be like, okay, I know this guy, we've already got that chemistry?
Well, I would have called a game with anybody, but to your point, there's chemistry and a relationship and a familiarity, And yes, it will be on Apple, right? But I'll be sitting in the same booth, in the same stadium, next to the same guy, looking at the same field. So yeah, there'll be a lot of familiarity. Once the sound leaves the booth, then it becomes a totally different thing. But still the mechanics of doing it, as Pablo would tell us, right? It doesn't matter if you're playing in the Open Cup or if you're playing in the MLS
you
Cup
keep
or if you're
the
playing
same
in the World
mentality.
Cup. If you're the outside back with the ball, are you playing it back to your goalkeeper? Would it be a good idea to play it over to the pivot? Should you find the 10? Should you play it up the sideline to the 9 and behind? It's like they're the same decisions. So, yeah.
You got to keep
with that analogy.
No, I did not expect that analogy to come there at all. But you got to keep the same mentality.
To your point, there's a lot
of
of familiarity, and there's a relationship that's really natural with Dunny because we've been doing the weekly show for so long, and because we called I didn't know it was over 300 games. When I started to do the math on it, I realized, well, that's probably true, but it didn't until I was told it didn't register.
Yeah, for sure. Also, the dress code's a little bit lighter, a little bit more casual with the Apple broadcast. So I don't know, fewer suits and ties. You've never really been. I know people see you on TV at Channel 2 and everything, dressed up in the coat, but you've never really been that big of a suit coat kind of guy to me. So that obviously is kind of nice to see you and Dunny a little bit more relaxed, a little bit more in maybe that casual environment that I think Apple's kind of going with. As well there.
Everyone who knows me knows I put on a tie when I have to.
When I have to. I'm the same way, and I just don't have to very often. So
you win.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I don't know about win, but it's something. It's something. Let's get right into this because it is also a little bit fitting, maybe not just the setting of you and Dunny being back together on the Apple broadcast, calling RSL, which you guys have done for years and years, or had done for years and years together, which you still do over the radio waves. But now bringing in the expansion club, San Diego FC, you're a hometown guy from San Diego County. Are you going to be able to remain objective and going back and forth with those two clubs? Or
Trey, will I be able to remain objective?
Yes.
Trey says I will be able to
I have no doubt.
There you go. Very little doubt. You're a true professional.
I think along those lines, there is always that notion of do you call the game as a homer or do you call the game? And
That's true.
PK, who I do the radio with, said something once about what he really appreciated about Hot Rod. Hot Rod loved the Jazz. Literally everyone who turned on the TV knew that. But Hot Rod also called the game because he loved basketball and he loved the accomplishments of the athletes, whatever they were doing. So if Kobe hit a big shot, even though, Kobe was public enemy number one inside the Delta Center and the Lakers were, as a group, public enemy number one, Hot Rod still had a certain amount of passion and excitement for it because it just takes a lot of skill, and that play's incredible. And I think that is why we watch sports, because we're watching people do stuff that we wish we could do that we know we can't. You watch somebody throw themselves with reckless abandon, leaping 3 feet in the air. It's like, most of us don't have that in our vertical jump, so that's not happening. Throw somebody a bicycle kick. Just throw yourself at the ball with break. We're not going to do that. How many ligaments would we strain? How many hamstrings would we tear, right? So always, appreciate that.
Yeah. I think I'm a little bit more concerned, honestly, not about your objectivity because you're a professional. You've also lived here in the Salt Lake area for...
I've actually lived here longer than I lived there.
And you lived in San Diego. Oh, it is officially longer. I was going to say about at least as long.
Double.
But, wow.
It's almost double. I left home and went to college when I was 17.
There you go.
I had a fall birthday, so I was always the young guy in the class.
Yeah, for sure. So you lived up here obviously longer, and if your allegiances are split, they're split for a good reason. You've always done a really good job of being down the middle, calling things down the middle, even with the quote unquote homer broadcast and everything. I think the more important question is what's the over under on number of UCSB references that you've put together?
1, because Emma Boateng is in the game.
Oh, there you go.
He played 1 year at UCSB. And he has an incredible backstory, coming from Ghana, and he did a year in Carpinteria, which is 10 minutes from downtown Santa Barbara, down the 101. And he was at the Cate School there, and he left there a year early, speaking of, kids are young. And he went to UCSB for a year, and then he only did 1 year, and he turned professional. And he was on his way. And it's crazy to see him back. I think that's the thing, not so much the homerism, but just the knowledge. There was a time he scored his first MLS goal, opened his account against RSL, right?
Yep.
And he had a 2-goal game against them, and he scored the playoffs against them. He had 5 goals in his career, and all 5 were against Real Salt Lake. 3 in the regular season, 2 in the playoffs. It wasn't until his 6th goal that he finally scored against somebody else. And he has scored again with New England. He scored another goal. There's something, I don't know what it is with him and RSL, but that guy finds the back of the net.
He might have scored more against us than any other
6?
opposing player.
That'd be
I have to look it up.
Yeah, look that up and see. I mean, somebody who's in the league a long time.
Trey in the research department.
I mean, Wondolowski, who's in the league forever, scored a bunch of goals.
Yeah, Wando's probably up there.
But there aren't, to your point, there aren't
But
many.
yeah.
I mean, Landon Donovan was in the league a long time and scored a lot of goals. So there's a handful of names I put up there, but Boateng's up there.
Yeah, for sure. So at least one. So maybe 1.5 on the Gaucho reference there. Yeah, from UCSB, which is probably about as many times as Dunny will mention his 3 semesters at Cal State Bakersfield. I'm sure as well. Yeah, he's got to get at least one of those in to kind of counterbalance you and counterweigh you there. Last question. I'll get you out of here on this because we'll throw this up. We'll probably throw this up on the podcast feed and all of that stuff. Is there just anything that you're looking forward to in reuniting with Dunny? Again, like I'm jokingly calling it the one night only tour. It may or may not actually be, but
I mean, we have a good time together. We have a good time when we were out on the road, walking around cities, killing time, going to eat, calling the game, doing the weekly show on KMYU.
Hiking Mount Royal in Montreal.
Very specific.
I'll never forget that story.
Very specific knowledge.
Biking in Vancouver.
Hiking in Vancouver, yeah.
So that is probably the biggest laugh I've ever gotten out of Dunny on the air. Is after he took that photo, got me in the helmet. That was a good look.
Yeah.
And so after that, we're calling a game 3 years later, and at this point we're not on the road anymore. We're calling on remote, but they feed in what they call bumper shots.
Yep.
All right. So there's a bumper shot, and it's from a chopper. I don't think it's from a drone. Maybe it was up so high. Maybe it's a drone or a chopper, and it's high up, and you see the water, in the bay, and it pans to Stanley Park, I think it is, and it pans, and it's literally on the east end of the island, which is where the scene of the crime. And I look back at glorious night in Vancouver, and you can literally see the spot where on Stanley Park where Dunny betrayed me, and Dunny didn't know it was coming, and he just burst out laughing. He knew exactly what I was talking about. But I did. I dropped the betrayal line where Dunny betrayed me. That was fun. But I mean, that is just a measure of us having a good time, whether it's at each other's expense or whatever. Who cares? It's sports. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be fun. I guess to elaborate on the San Diego point, because I'm better on that side of the microphone than I am on this side of the microphone. I think the thing that I bring about San Diego is the knowledge of, soccer history there.
Oh, sure.
I was there. I hadn't left yet when the San Diego Sockers moved to town. I probably would have been in high school. And so
yeah, the old, I guess still current Arena League team. I think they've rebranded since then.
They use that soccer brand in a couple of indoor leagues. It's really powerful. They played at the sports arena, and now they built a new place up in the North County with luxury suites and bells and whistles and all that stuff. But they were either 6 or 7 seasons, I think, right at the end of North American Soccer League. And as the league went down to 9 teams before it folded, they were in it the last year when there were 9 teams.
Yeah.
And it was funny because I saw some photos actually sent one to Dunny. I'll show you the photo. I don't think you can reference what you sent back. The photo was awkward. It was just an awkward 70s photo.
As a lot of photos from the old NASL were too.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
And I sent it to them. But I mean, they had really good players. Hugo Sanchez went through there. He was a young player who was playing in Mexico, and their season ended, and he wanted to keep playing, so he came up on loan 2 summers. And I think that there's also a parallel, and I've never lived in Seattle, but there's a parallel between what's happening in San Diego and what happened in Seattle. The Sounders went in there, and there was a soccer community to tap into, but there was also this void in town because the Sonics had left.
Right.
And, they had a bigger facility than most MLS facilities. They drew massive crowds. Now they hit the right note over and over. They won 8 trophies.
Sure.
4 Open Cups.
Right, you got to keep that
MLS
momentum
Cups.
somewhere.
Right, you got to keep it going. But there was a void, and they successfully filled it. And with the Chargers leading San Diego, I mean, they were just, they're, I know so many people from San Diego when we talk, and maybe we met in Utah, right? And it doesn't matter. We all talk about the Chargers and how upset we are they left. And none of them, like literally no one I know still follows the Chargers now that they're in LA.
Yep.
And so there's a void. And there's, I mean, the Padres are trying to fill it. They've been to the playoffs 3 times in 5 years. And San Diego State went to the NCAA basketball championship game and lost to UConn.
Yep.
So other teams are trying to fill it too, but there are a lot of fans. There is I mean, certainly this new team can tap into the soccer community, which is there and has been there. A lot of people don't know this, but there's a team called the Toros that played in Balboa Stadium the first year of the NASL.
Yep.
So there's a long history of soccer there, and you get to tap into that. But there's also sports fans looking for a team. And in an effort to grow the sport, those people are an attractive audience. And to some degree, the Sounders have hit on that.
Yeah.
And so can San Diego do that? And they've hit the right notes out of the gate. There's nothing in San Diego that appeals to fans as much as beating the team from LA. And the league, on some level, somebody got that right.
Right.
This is not an accident they played the Galaxy in the first game. And they won. So
Yep.
they hit the right note out of the gate. And you got to sustain it over a long period of time. But I think there's a huge opportunity. And they're playing in the same stadium San Diego State plays in. It seats about 35,000. They have 34,500. Sold it out for the opener. So, it's there. And it's up to them now to build on it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think I'm extremely biased in this conversation with regards to David James because we've called so many games and we've traveled this incredible country of ours together for so many years as part of the RSL broadcasts. And, while I absolutely love my T.O. Max, and I probably called even more games with Max over the course of my career and my timeline at Fox Soccer Channel and ESPN. The moment that I found out that Max was not going to be able to be on the broadcast, I was intrigued to see who I'd get paired with because it happened a few times last year. But then when I got the text message about David James, I was like, absolutely, he's one of the best. And I'm of humble opinion, and maybe egotistical opinion, that DJ was one of the best, if not the best, local play-by-play announcer in Major League Soccer prior to this Apple deal. So for him to get his opportunity to showcase his talent, which is extraordinarily high, I couldn't think of not only of a better partner to be, paired with Max not being there, but the fact it's Real Salt Lake, it's at home, and it's against his beloved San Diego sports team seems even more fitting.
I was just going to say, and I was going to save this a little bit for later, but it seems almost fitting that it's 2 Salt Lake residents right now on the broadcast for RSL and San Diego FC's first visit here. Are you going to be able to keep DJ from being a little bit biased towards his hometown club?
Listen, DJ is world renowned for figuring out a way to get University of California, Santa Barbara in UCSB in almost every broadcast to a much annoying effect. But yeah, I mean, 2 Southern California kids, 2 transplants, calling a game, and such an extraordinary start to the season for San Diego. Listen, I think it's fitting and extremely excited. I don't think he's going to be able to contain his excitement about San Diego, not Southern California, but San Diego, having the latest expansion in Major League Soccer.
Yeah, no, for sure. We've seen the broadcast for a couple of years now with the Apple deal, and I'm not asking you to give away too much behind the scenes magic because that ruins television, obviously, and that kind of thing. But how do you expect kind of this weekend to maybe be a little bit different because of Apple, because of the league production, that kind of a thing, maybe from what you were doing with DJ before, with the RSL local broadcast, KMYU, all of that stuff? Can you kind of tease some of that?
I mean, well, first and foremost, the strategic difference is that it's not a 3-hour window. So we won't be doing 30-minute pre-games, 30-minute post-games. Sorry, I'm going to jump out of my truck real quick. So, basically he's going to have to catch up on the rundown pretty quickly, in terms of what the ask is from Apple. But I have zero concerns whatsoever. I mean, you talk about a pros pro, a guy that's won virtually every sporting radio television award that there is to win here in Salt Lake City. I mean, he's the pro, and I've never ever been concerned about going to air with David James in any capacity. But yeah, I mean, the run of the show is, basically similar to what we see, every single week. We'll hit our lineups, we'll talk about the players to watch, we'll get into the game, we'll tell the storylines, and we'll see if Real Salt Lake can replicate the performance that they put in against Seattle, and we'll see if San Diego can replicate the two performances to start. So far they're on their way to try to mimic what we saw in St. Louis, albeit completely different in their expansion year. But Mikey Veras and company, they have a very exciting style of soccer that we've seen in a short amount of time in Major League Soccer.